The end of last class, we finished up with the Hermeneutics book, and so now we're just applying the principles that we've gone over, mostly about application. So the last chapter is about making application of whatever you're studying. So I wanted to look at Jesus walking on the water towards the disciples, Mark's account of it, and start here, see where it goes, and there's lots of really cool things here. So let's take a look at that. Go around about the country. All right, so we'll read this passage, and then we'll broaden it out to get the context, and then we'll see some really cool things, I hope, and then we'll try and make application to the text. So, starting in verse 45, and straightway he constrained his disciples to get into the ship, and to go the other side before unto Bethsaida, while he sent away the people. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. And when even was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. And about the fourth watch of the night he cometh unto them, walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit, and cried out. For they all saw him, and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them, and saith unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered. There's like 4 words in that one statement. Like, sore amazed, beyond measure, wonder, like, whoa. All right, in modern vernacular, it blew their minds. Like, yeah, there you go. Little updated translation there, right? For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. That's an interesting. So it goes from they were amazed beyond measure and wondered to why were they so amazed? It gives the explanation for, right? For, here's the explanation. For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their hearts were hardened. Like, huh? What does walking on the water have to do with the loaves? Also, we didn't read about loaves. Like, oh, well, now we got to read about loaves to understand, like, what's up with that. So just before they get sent away, let's see. So in the broader context, so you'd want to read what came before, and you'd want to read what comes after. We're just going to read what comes before. But Jesus had sent out his disciples to spread the message, and they're healing people. They're doing all kinds of great things, right? And then they come back to Jesus, and this is in verse 30. And the apostles gathered themselves together unto Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said unto them, Come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while. So they had just been working for a long time. And Jesus goes, Hey, let's go take a break. There's a simple application right there, right? What's the application there? Rest is a good thing. Rest is a necessary thing. Even Jesus rested. Even Jesus was like, hey, let's pull ourselves apart and rest. After it's like so much work, cool, come apart and rest. It's not just work yourself to the bone until you die. That's not like the Sabbath should dissuade you from any thinking like that. What's one of the points of the Sabbath? It's a day of rest, right? When you're a slave to Pharaoh, do you have a day of rest? No, you work until you die, right? If God's going to teach Israel to not do that and to trust him. It's like, you don't have to work until you die. You don't have to you can actually take a break. It's okay. No. I need to do this, and then I need to do this, and hustle, hustle, hustle. I gotta have my side hustle, and then I gotta have my side hustle of my side hustle, so that way everything's gonna be okay. Like, how about it's gonna be okay whether you have your side hustle or not? Like, it's okay to take a break. All right, that was like a little bit too much of an extension of the application, because to keep it within the context of here, the apostles had just finished doing the work that God had called them to do, right? So it's not necessarily, job. It's like, okay, what's God called you to do? You're doing that faithfully. You return to Jesus, and he goes, all right, you've been working really hard. Cool, let's take a break. Like, taking a break is a good thing. So right there, we've moved from a narrative about the apostles to an application for our own lives, just by way of, this is a descriptive passage describing something that happened with the apostles. We place ourselves within the same place as the apostles, keeping the context of they're doing what Jesus told them to do. Like, it's not like, oh, any kind of work. It's a specific work, right? They're going out and they're preaching the gospel. They're sharing the message. Like, they're healing people. Like, they're doing things that Jesus told them to do. And then now it's time to take a break because you've done lots of work. So keeping the spiritual context. Like, it wasn't just work. It was also these. So they gather themselves together. He says, let's go to a desert place. Basically, it's uninhabited, an uninhabited place. And we'll know it wasn't like, if you're picturing the Sahara Desert, that's not quite right. Not just like sand. One, that's just not the Middle East. And then two, there's lots of uninhabited places that will have grass. And when he feeds the 5,000, he tells them all to sit down in the grass and feed them. So it's not just like dirt and sand and rocks. Like, there's some grass there too. So, but we'll get there. All right. For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat. They were so busy that they didn't even have time to eat. Like, so it's like, whoa, let's take a break. And they departed into a desert place by ship privately. So they were in one spot, they had to get into a boat, went to another spot, and now they're in this desert place. And the people saw them departing, and many knew him and ran afoot thither out of all cities, and outwent them and came together unto him. So the things that they're doing draw so many, like, they hear what's going on, they see him leave, and they're like, no, and they run after him, right? And Jesus, when he came out, saw much people, and he was moved with compassion toward them, because they were as sheep not having a shepherd. See what this says. I think, it's just the cross-reference with Matthew. Okay. Can you guys think of any place in the Old Testament where shepherds are criticized by the prophet? Shepherds of Israel. Ezekiel. Yep. So those shepherds were abusing the sheep. So God was bringing judgment on and that was the priests. The shepherds were the priests in that case, in Ezekiel. Jesus has a different reaction to the sheep, right? These are sheep, and they're just wandering because they don't have a shepherd. They should have shepherds, but they're wandering around like they don't have any. And that moves him with compassion. So he goes, okay. And he began to teach them many things. Again, they haven't eaten. If you remember, they're like, all right, we need to take a break. There were so many people just in and out that they didn't even have time to eat. Like, they were so busy helping people that they didn't have time to eat. So now it's like, cool, we're going to go over here. They're still flocking. And it's like, he still doesn't have time to eat. How does he handle that situation? He continues to serve. That's what makes Jesus Jesus and me not Jesus. Right? How many of you guys can identify with being hangry? Never been hangry? Oh, never ever. Like, right. Yeah. But I mean, right? Trying to it's kind of like Brother Hall would always say. He's like, put yourself there. What's going on here? This is what Jesus does. And verse 35, and when the day was now far spent, his disciples came unto him and said, this is a desert place, and now the time is far past. So now it's getting into the evening. They've been helping people all day. Send them away that they may go into the country round about and into the villages and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat. So not only have Jesus and the disciples not eaten anything, they've been working all day without food. And the people, like, you ever, this is a bad analogy, but it's almost like when you go to the state fair, right? And you stand in line to buy tickets to get on the rides, and then you stand in line to ride the rides, and then you look at your watch and you're like, it's been 5 hours, right? Because you just been, I mean, this is a poor analogy because you're just standing in line, right? But then you go, the day is far spent. I haven't eaten anything. No wonder the kids are crying, like, right? And so it's just like, all right, we got, and then you got to stand in line to get food, right? Because depending on where you go, it's going to be a long line, right? A turkey leg. Yeah, you probably there's no line. Like, why? Why is there no line here? This is the state fair. It's good. Good point. Good point. Be careful. Be careful. Um, so he's like, all right, we need to send these people away. That way we can get something to eat. And he answered and he says, give ye them to eat. Like, you give them something to eat. And they're like, and they say unto him, shall we go and buy 200 pennyworth of bread and give them to eat? Pennyworth. What's pennyworth? Oh, okay. So basically, that's the same as like a shekel, or not a shekel, denarius. So like a day's wage. Like this is not a small amount of money. Like 200 days' wages. Like how big is this crowd? 200 days' wages might be able to feed this crowd. That's more than half a year of wages. Like it's a lot, right? And he said to them, how many loaves have ye? Go and see. And when they knew, they say 5 and 2 fishes. And he commanded them to make them all sit down by companies upon the green grass. Interesting. That's an interesting word that's there. So in your lexical syntactical, like if you're reading through the story and you're going, what are some interesting words that you might want to look up? I think that would be one of them. Like that's not a very common word. It is. Yes, companies, platoons. Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, and they sat down in ranks by hundreds and fifties. And if you're thinking Old Testament, be thinking Exodus and how Israel is set up around the tabernacle. They're set up in companies by hundreds, and also like they have leaders over them by hundreds and fifties. So, like an allusion back to the Old Testament, Jesus is about to, by this illusion, like he's about to show what he can do for all of Israel. Just as the tabernacle is within Israel, Jesus is right in the midst, about to do something great. And when he had taken 5 loaves and 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven, blessed, and brake the loaves, and gave them to his disciples to set before them. The 2 fishes divided he among them all. And they did all eat and were filled. This word, I believe, same word, yeah, to be satisfied. Satisfied. And they were all satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments and of the fishes. And they that did eat the loaves were about 5,000 men. That's not including women and children. So this is a huge miracle. And there's little, so like what are the things in that part, right? Because we went back here to see like what did Mark mean where they didn't understand the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. And I think what he's doing is he's pulling in from the Old Testament. And so I think we can make comparisons from this to Israel and see what the compare and contrast. So first, what are just like some broad things, just some things in this part, the feeding of the 5,000, that it's like, oh, okay, I can see where that would come from. Like, there's a similarity to something in the Old Testament. Israel. Manna, right? Manna from heaven. Excellent. What'd you say? Let's say again. Oh, the quail. Okay. Okay. Where are they? They're in a desert place. So that fits with the manna, right? Like Israel's wandering around in the desert and God takes care of them for 40 years. So there's a comparison there as well. They're in a desert place, right? It's a miracle having to do with bread, food, vision. What does this say about the nature of Jesus? Okay, that he's God. Anything more? Like, what is it? What does he have? What does he have control over? Of all, yeah, everything. Yes. So, but he can take something and turn it into more, right? Like I'm trying to draw principles of theology, something that we learn about God from. Yes. Hmm? Bread of life. Like, yeah, that's like he is that, right? And he like demonstrates that by, and really, so this just gets into John 6, which is fantastic. And if you wanted to read all of the Gospels record this event, and if you like, they're all a little different, but John 6 is huge. There's this whole conversation that Jesus has with the people. Like he leaves, the people chase after him, and they're like, hey, how about you do that whole feed everybody again thing? In fact, it'd be great if you were king, because we'll never starve. Like, imagine if you're besieged by your enemy and you never run out of food. Your enemies will run out of food before you do. Like, you're good to go. Like, it doesn't, right? It doesn't matter. And then, like, he uses the metaphor of being the bread of life, right? And he calls himself the manna that comes down from heaven. He is that manna that comes down from heaven in order to feed. And they're like, yeah, but God gave manna every day, and you only fed us one day. So what's going on with that, Jesus? And he's like, whoa, I'm the better manna that you need. And he eventually pushes that. Yeah, so he is the spiritual bread that everybody needs. And the same way that bread satisfies your hunger, Jesus satisfies our spiritual hunger. And then he pushes that metaphor all the way to like the breaking point by saying, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you. Like, what? I know I've probably mentioned that metaphor probably more than almost any other just because of how extreme it is, but it's a good example of a metaphor where he's not talking about his flesh and blood. He's talking about spiritually how he can satisfy you. That's what the metaphor is pushing. And you don't have, like, if you don't have Jesus, you don't have life. That's what he's getting at. It's so powerful. Then we get into here, and he uses the words like companies and ranks and hundreds and fifties. That's how Israel was set up around the tabernacle, because they were to go into the promised land and conquer it as an army. So they were organized in that way to go and conquer. And so Mark is pulling that in and going like, okay, are you seeing what's happening here? In a similar way, God is in the midst of his people, taking care of them, providing for them. Here's Jesus in the midst of the 50s and the hundreds and the companies on the grass, taking care of them, providing for them. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, like it's so good. Bible just like holds together so well. Cool. So, so then he feeds them, right? He prays over the food. He feeds them. The disciples again are working. Imagine 5,000, more than 5,000 people. How long would it? I mean, just imagine a potluck right over here. It's not 5,000 people. How long does it take for that many people? And they're standing up and going and like getting their own food. How long would it take to distribute to 5,000 people sitting in hundreds and fifties? They've just been working all day. Right. Like there's like it's still work, but everybody's satisfied. Or yeah. Yeah. Yep. Come on. There there'd be representatives for each, yeah, for groups. And yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't be like one by one, right? Yeah. But it would still take a long time, right? And kind of the point I'm getting at here is they're still working. This story started with them, hey, let's take a break. And they're still still working. That becomes important in just a second. Now, I also want to emphasize they're doing what the Lord tells them. They're faithful to do what the Lord tells them. Everyone eats and everyone is satisfied, right? All were filled right here. And then they took up the baskets and fragments and all that, and there were 12 baskets full. And that's like, hey, disciples, there's even more than enough for you individually. And I think there's a little nugget there for like, yes, you're tired and exhausted and need a break. And it's not that you don't need a break, you do need a break. But God can supply strength, you can continue to work, and you can be satisfied. And then some, right? I think there's an application there. And we're just looking at the story, seeing what happens and going, like overall, how do we kind of zoom out and see the principle at work and then see how that applies? So again, we're moving from the particulars of the story, trying to find a principle, a theological principle or a universal principle, and then find an application for ourselves. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, or maybe it was like they would like, oh, it's just okay. It's like we're just keep it going. Yeah, I don't know how that actually worked or what it looked like, but everybody. What we do know is that everybody was satisfied, all the people and the disciples. They just get done doing all of that work, got full bellies, they got a basket full of food for themselves, and then what happens? Straightway, so that means immediately, he constrained his disciples to get into the ship. So that means he forced them. Yeah, it was like, no, you've got to go. You got to go now. This will become, I think this point right here is really important for the application because the storm that comes is not application wise of their own making. That's important. I think that becomes very important. So the first thing we see is that Jesus makes them. So God tells them to do something. That'd be another way to broaden that out into a principle. God tells his servant to do something. Yep. Jesus knows. Disciples have no idea. But he definitely told them to go, knowing what's coming, which is interesting. So they're to go to the other side in the Bethsaida, and then he went and sent the people away. What did I write as notes? Yeah, constrained, forced, compelled, urged. God wanted them on the boat in the storm. And yeah, actually that word for sent is in a different context translated divorce. So he's separating them from the crowds and pushing them onto the boat and telling them to go to Bethsaida. So they get a command and they're faithfully following the command. Right. And so we could, in Mark's story, we don't get any like discussion as to why he's sending them away. If you read the other ones, I seem to remember reading that it was like, again, the people are trying to make Jesus their king. And he's like, I don't want you influenced by this way of thinking. Like, Jesus is here to do a specific thing, and this might influence them into shortcutting the way he's going to become king. And he has to become king through the cross. It has to be that way and not any other way. And if they start being influenced by the crowds, like, this is the greatest thing, see? Messiah's here. Let's take on the Romans. That's not the way. That's not the way. So it's like, all right, you got to go. And he's going to send the people away. After that, he departs into a mountain to pray. I wonder what he prayed about. I wonder if that was a temptation for Jesus. What was the last temptation that Jesus was tempted with in Matthew 4? Yep. So the first one is turn the stones into bread because he'd been fasting for 40 days. Next one is to tempt God by casting himself off the pinnacle of the temple. He's like, hey, the angels will save you. It'll be fine. If you really are the Son of God. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you are. And then the last one is kingdoms of the earth. Shows him all the kingdoms of the earth. And he's like, I can give you all of this. You can rule and reign over the entire earth if you just fall down and worship me. And it's like, you don't have to go through the cross? Would that be a temptation? Yeah, it would. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. He's not, he's hangry, right? He's in a state of fasting. All right. So maybe that's what he's praying. Maybe he's praying for the disciples. He knows the storm is coming. Maybe he's praying for them to be prepared for it. It doesn't say. We're just speculating, but those are reasonable. Well, yeah. How does this story end? That's what we'll get there. All right. And so when nighttime has finally come, the ship was in the middle of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he saw them toiling and rowing. The wind was contrary unto them. And about the fourth watch of the night, he cometh unto them walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. So this toiling is like torturous work. Again, more work. More, right? Yeah, toiling. Basanizo. To punish by physical torture or torment. So the kind of, like, they're terrified for their life. This storm is overwhelming. They're toiling and rowing. The wind is blowing them around. And then between 3 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock, that's the fourth watch, 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., it's pitch black. That's when he comes walking on the water. So from, let's say the sun goes down at 9 p.m. and they're in the middle of the they're in the middle of the lake, and they've been fighting for over 6 hours. Like, how bad? And it says it's torturous kinds of, like, it's awful. So, disciples,
They went.
that's right. Well, they have had a really good meal. So that, like, they have food for the toil, right? It's not like they didn't eat and then they continued not to eat. So tempered a little bit, but are they tired? Yes. Wet, they're scared, it's awful. That's not how you spell it, but that's not. Yeah. Yep. Yep. And this would have passed by them. Yeah, Genesis 32:26. This is a similar phrase to when God walks past Moses in the cleft of the rock, passes by him. And Mark puts that in there on purpose. They're in the middle of this storm, and Jesus wants to. It's not like Jesus is just gonna stroll past, like, I told you to be in Bethsaida, and keeps on going. He's there. He's showing up to help. But how did they interpret it? 49. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit and cried out. For they all saw him and were troubled. Disciples didn't see Jesus coming to help. God isn't here to help. That's how they interpreted it. It says, well, so, I mean, yeah, it's dark, winds, wave, that kind of thing. But they supposed it had been a spirit, right? Yeah. 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 And so how does Jesus handle that? He talks with them immediately, right? Immediately, he addresses the issue immediately and says to them, be of good cheer, it is I. And this in Greek is ego eimi. And if you look at the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, when Moses asks for God's name, in Greek, it's ego eimi. It's I am, which is what Jesus says right here. So not only would he pass by, just like God passes by Moses, he gives the same name. Same name. I am. What should be the result of I am? Be not afraid. Yeah, be of good cheer. Torturous toil. Be happy. Like, what? Why? Because I am is here. That changes everything. Or it should. Gets in the ship, the wind ceased. And they were sore amazed in themselves, beyond measure, and wondered. For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. What is the constant criticism of Israel? Hard hearts. And this is, I think the principle here is, say we get it. Don't get it. He's right. This changes everything. He has the power. Jesus is the creator. Jesus is the redeemer. Jesus, he's all that. He just fed more than 5,000 people with all of the bread, all of the ideas of manna from heaven, of being taken care of in the wilderness, of all of the provision. Everything should be slamming into their minds, and it bounces off their hard heart. They don't get it. But Izzy, oh man, I want to cry. Oh my. It's just pulling things out of the story. And the application just, and when you make the principles, right? Faithfully following orders. Work is hard, right? And it's okay that it's hard. Why? Because Jesus makes them go. So, like Jesus tells us to do something. It's hard. That's okay. If you're doing the will of God, don't forget that he's with you. But you get caught up in the circumstances and in the wind and the waves and you just forget. It's easy to forget. And then it's easy to question. Now, questions are not always bad. Questions seek answers. Doubts just fester. So make sure that it's not a doubt, it's a question. God can handle questions. You can ask Habakkuk. He asked questions. He got answers that he didn't really like, but he asked questions. And don't be surprised if you get answers that you don't like. They landed in Gennesaret, drew ashore. When they were coming out of the ship straightway, they knew him and ran through the whole region round about to carry people. It's more work. But they had this experience with the Lord, and it prepared them for more experience. And that's what happens in our own lives. God tells us to go and do something, whatever it is. And we're faithful in doing it. We're faithfully following the orders, and we think, oh, everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows. Not always. But even in the storm, I am is here. And that changes everything. And if our hearts aren't hard, be able to see that. Remember the loaves. Remember the loaves. Now, whatever that particular thing is that God is calling you to do, that's your personal application for you. It's probably going to be different for me. It could be, but that's where you can start putting particular situations in. But knowing that it's Jesus who makes them get into the boat, like you can't be like, oh, well, I'm in this storm because I sinned. Keeping the context. That's a completely different kind of storm. Like, you're in a storm of your own making. You're going to have to deal with that. Is I am still there? He'll meet you there too, which is a grace beyond grace. It's amazing. But that's not what this story is conveying. So we want to keep that. That's important to keep that straight for the application part. Yeah. Oh man.